And we are live here at hashtag Jeopardy Live panel for our second live roundtable of this season. Once again, I am Andy Saunders, and I will be moderating tonight's discussion. Tonight we have quite a panel this evening. So first up, I'm going to introduce the only returning panelist I have this evening, Christopher Denault. Thanks for joining me again, Chris.
Oh, thanks for having me back. I'm a one-and-done guy, so I'm glad to be back amongst the royalty here. You'll see him later.
Back with our new panelists here. First up, going to go in order of when you debuted on the program. So first up, a two-time champion from 2012, winning just under $34,000 in total. We have Amy Stephenson.
Hello. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Our next panelist tonight, so far up to last night's episode, 7 wins and counting, $166,500. Seth Wilson, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yay,
and congratulations on your run so far. And finally, from yesterday's episode, Miranda Prince, thanks for joining us.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so if you have any questions or comments, the YouTube watch link has a chat function. So if you want to say something there, you should be able to. If you're watching on YouTube, I just typed hi into the chat. If not, or if you have any, comments you want to leave on Twitter for the panel, you can also use that. Just tag them with the hashtag Jeopardy Live panel, and if I like them, I'll read them out. I would say the big news to start with, we've got Seth. 7 wins and counting from Alex Epstein. Nice job on Jeopardy so far. Yeah. I'm guessing this was something you weren't expecting.
No, when I went out to tape, I thought if I got really lucky, I might be able to win one. And Alex, I think in my second or third game, said if you're really good and really lucky, you can have a nice streak on Jeopardy. And I feel like most of it was luck, getting categories that I knew something about, and luck. Unexpected, but really, really great.
You certainly seem to have the internet going right from the start. I think you had something obscene like 13 correct before the first break in your first game. That's like a Ken Jennings type run. But So, I mean, what were your feelings, opening so strong, just going in like that?
Well, I had fears of not getting anything right, of just sort of like standing there with the buzzer in my hand the whole time. When I was able to buzz in on the first question, I thought, okay, good. And then I was able to just keep getting in and had a really nice streak at the beginning of my first game. And I thought might be an unsustainable pace. The second board, I slowed down significantly. But that was when, in between the first and second segments in that show, Alex looked up and looked at me and said, "Somebody came to play." And like that was kind of worth it. Like the whole thing. If I had lost that first game, it still would have been worth it just for that. Yeah, I mean, it was also sort of a little bit of having started off so hot. I felt like stories were really conducive to stuff that I would know.
So some comments so far from Nate. Hi, Seth. Go Dogs. Hope to see you back at Blind Pig one day. From Ken Hirsch. You young folks are great at the signaling device. Alex Epstein again. Seth has a bigger beard than he did on air. And of course, you taped in early August, so plenty of time to grow it out. Are you planning on growing it out for the for a? I think it's pretty safe to say that with your total, you're going to the Tournament of Champions. So,
Yeah.
are you planning on growing it out for the tournament?
I grow a playoff beard for luck.
Nice.
You should grow a ZZ Top beard.
Yeah. See if I can get it down to like my waist by the time I get to go back for the tournament. If I do,
That might be a bit of a tall ask, actually. But and a comment from Drew Stav: no luck, talent. But I would say, you know what? To be honest, I think Seth is right. Though there's a lot of luck involved in Jeopardy, and I think everyone on this panel would agree with that.
Oh, yes.
We've all had varying degrees of luck with things like the signaling device. I think Chris can talk to how the signaling device can be.
Just a fickle little beast. It's all the little thing is. If you're in the right zone there, you can just go one after the other. But if you're in the wrong little spot, you spend half the game just trying to get back.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so much time, and so many questions, and so much money. Watching the other two guys next to you just go act one after the other, you just get frustrated.
yeah.
So yeah, I've been there.
Now, I know we had a little bit of discussion about this, and I think this is something the entire panel can contribute to. We had a small discussion about this before we went live, but how do we feel about, the way the internet has been talking the past week and a half? And Amy, maybe you can contribute about how the internet was with your run back in 2012.
I didn't have a lot of internet response when I was on. I did look at the J boards, the J archive boards when I was on, and there was a lot of discussion about how all of my math was bad and all of my wagers were terrible, and they reserved more scorn for my opponent, who was an actuary. And so probably they thought he really should have had his math right. And finally, and I kept reading this thread more and more indignantly because they seemed to be assuming that you knew the question when you wagered. And then finally someone said the correct wager is the one that wins. Thank you. I don't need to add to that. But I haven't got the sort of response that a lot of women have gotten that continue to get. I think I came in just before the real surge in internet trolls.
Lucky you.
yes, very lucky, very lucky.
People on the J board today, now I just glanced at it and I am not going to respond, but they're picking on me for only betting $100 on my my daily double, which I had no freaking idea what the answer was. So, I think that in retrospect, that was a very good wager.
Yeah.
I had,
Whatever.
you know what? I believe I seem to recall Keith Williams. I watched the final wager for about yesterday's episode, and I do want to say Keith Williams said that betting 100, there is no shame whatsoever in betting $100 on a daily double, because you are just telling everyone, I don't think I know this, and.
Right. And I didn't.
And you're protecting your money.
In Prisoner of Trebekistan, Bob Harris says half the battle is knowing what you don't know. And if you feel you have no idea on self-help books, then by all means, bet $100.
Well, it's like when Seth bet zero for Final Jeopardy just last week. I mean, Seth, tell us by your rationale doing that. Was the category that just kind of like to the point where you want to bet anything, and it turned out okay?
Geography is an area that I am not quite as proficient in, and especially like European geography, I probably have the best grasp on. I know it. Thought the best bet was not risk any money because I didn't know what the odds of the other players knowing it were either. It was risky, but it ended up working. But yeah, that I had studied some geography before I went on that, but I just felt like the odds of me knowing in general, and specifically non-European So, somebody on Twitter compared me to Bill Belichick for that, which, while I am not a Patriots fan, I take as a great compliment.
You know, I saw that too, and I definitely, you know, as a I'm not a Patriots fan, but you know what? It works, and I think it's a you know, he's got that higher level strategic mind going, and whatever he does seems to work, and that I think it a very apt comparison there. Let's see. Some comments. I'm going to delve into your interview subject tonight because there seems to be there seems to be people who are very interested in that, at least on Twitter. Alyssa Flagg says, I'll get you to answer this in a second, but Alyssa asks or says, we know who Seth's mom likes, but who are Seth's favorite past Jeopardy champions? And also, while you're thinking about your answer to that one, Sean Cawley from last season, he says, Seth can tell his mom Philip Tew is exactly as nice as she assumes he is. He's a great guy. I agree with that. I interviewed him last March for panel, and he is a really, really nice guy. So yes, to the question, who are your favorite past Jeopardy champs? And I guess the rest of you can chime in with yours as well.
Boy, that's tough. I mean, what comes to mind is obviously Julia Collins. I thought she had her style of gameplay was similar to mine. I mean, Ken, does anybody ever say that?
That's too easy.
And Brad. And I played a very different game from Arthur Chu, but I thought that it was a really interesting strategy. And I really respected the approach that he had to the game. And yeah, I really liked Philip from last season as well. So, and obviously, you know, present company, I would also include in there. Just amazing things about the experience and the Jeopardy contestant community is, and how a great group of people it is to get to talk to and swap ideas with. So, yeah, that would be my answer.
Alex Epstein is saying he thinks Seth is more like Jason Keller. He won 9 shortly before Amy was on. Actually, about 3 or 4 weeks before Amy was on. Let's see. You're because Alex seems to really want to know. No relation to Ashley Wilson from last season, Seth?
No.
Okay. Didn't think so, but figured. A good question. We've mentioned this a couple of times on panel before, but it's always a good thing to talk about. This one's from Drew Stav. Were you able to practice how to do the buzzer before taping so that you could get a feel for it? So, you know, we always get some new listeners here on Jeopardy Live panel. I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but it's a good thing to talk about again. So, you guys want to go into how buzzer rehearsal works?
You play a few mock rounds of the game, and yeah, you get to try out the buzzer, and they call on the people who actually buzz in first, so you know if you got in first. And they kind of, if you're not doing that well, they give you more chances to try. So they really want everyone to be at least a little comfortable with the buzzer before they tape.
Yeah, plus if you've been in the audience watching like the first 3 shows, then there's like a lunch break. They'll come back again after the lunch break and you have a little round again. So like if you're sitting there in the audience the entire time, you kind of lose your game, I guess. They give me another 5-10 minutes or so, I think. At least that's how long it was when I was there, about maybe 5 minutes.
About
just
that.
for the last 2 sets.
Yeah, and I was actually present for an entire taping day before I got to tape. I was one of the people who was left over to the next day of taping, so I had additional chances to practice. And in the afternoon of the first day, I was just crossing my fingers I wouldn't get chosen because I could not get the buzzer in rehearsal to save my life. But the next morning, I was ready to go, and so I was very glad of that second chance.
Nice.
So, actually, that's a fortuitous thing you just said, because it allows me to ask another question that I wasn't sure I'd be able to. But if you were a carryover, that means I believe you shared a green room with Dan McShane, who
Yes, I did.
was, who came in with quite a run going.
Yes.
So I've asked this before of a panel, and between you and Miranda, I think maybe even Chris with regards to Hunter.
Yeah.
And maybe even you can chime in here, Seth, with your thoughts with Siddharth. But what's it like when you get into that green room, or the announcement, and I guess Maggie asks the champ how much, how many games and how much they've won. What's the reaction when you find out how the champ has been doing?
Well, Dan fooled us because he had won one. And of course, we didn't know it because it hadn't aired. So Maggie said, "How many of you won?" And he said, 13. And we all sort of stared. He said, "Just kidding, 1," which broke the ice very well. So we didn't have that sort of fear. But I can imagine the alarm if Maggie had said, "That's correct."
Hey, you feel bad for the people that played in the Jennings area. And they asked him how many he's won.
Oh my gosh.
Like 47? I mean, you'd be toast right at that point. You hear that and go, okay, that's it. I'm playing for a second.
I mean, it is important to not let yourself be psyched out. I did a lot of preparation to just not let myself be psyched out. And luckily, I didn't have a lot of really intimidating factors like that. But it's a very psychological game, and you do have to prepare for that.
So, what was your reaction finding out that Seth had won, the entire previous tape day?
Yeah, I think that got in my head a little bit, maybe. It was a little intimidating, which is silly because, everyone wins until they don't. Or, I mean, everyone who wins until they don't.
Yeah, we're all losers in the end.
Right.
I just tell people that, I had my 10-game streak, but I started with a loss instead of the 9 wins. So I did it backwards. So that's my excuse.
And what was it like hearing about Siddharth's run?
Well, it was early in the season. So I think at that time he had the longest run of the season.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still, it's intimidating because that person has at least games of in-game buzzer experience that I was very envious of, and that I was very that is kind of intimidating, especially because having read Ken Jennings' book and Prisoner of Trebekistan, working the buzzer is so important. It can psych you out a little bit. And I was hoping, actually, it's funny you said this, Amy, because I was hoping to not get called for the first game. I wanted to see one play, but then I got called for the first game that morning. So, which retroactively I think was better, that I didn't have time to sit there and think about it too much, that I just got right into it. But yeah, I think it's, like your goal when you go there is to win one. And so when you hear that somebody's done that, it's really impressive. And it's hard to not be a little intimidated by it, for me at least.
So according to Sean Colley, so actually I'm going to wait a little bit on that one. I'll get back to your tweet, Sean, because it sounds like you're doing a multi-part tweet. Now, my next question is for Seth. You had some early struggles, at least by my charting, on some of your daily doubles in your first few games. Did that kind of affect how much you have been wagering, your last few games on your daily doubles?
Yeah, a little bit. Once bitten, twice shy, and also especially if it's late in the game. And there was one this week, the last letter, first letter category, and there was a daily double in it, and I wagered because I wasn't sure I would know it because it's such a broad thing. But yeah, I think that the struggles I had early, because I was looking at the statistics that you post, and like I in a net negative at one point for daily doubles.
Yeah.
Factored into my thinking, yeah.
Okay, so now the comment from Sean, it looks like it's all done, and it's a bit of a doozy. When he taped, Maggie said that Ken Jennings had been in recently for something, and she'd hoped she could have put him in the green room when the day's players arrived, so she could pretend his loss was overturned on a technicality and he was back. Now,
Oh, that Maggie.
These are being fair and square. We all know that.
from what I mean, yes. From what I know from my experience auditioning, Maggie is awesome. I didn't realize she was that much of a troll, but I'm sure that would have broken the ice, I think, a little bit for the contestants. I'm not sure how much it would have psyched them out, but it certainly would have broken the ice. Another question from Drew to Seth. I noticed you went from wearing a sweater your first day to a suit at the end of the week. Did you put any thought into your wardrobe and becoming more and more quote-unquote successful?
No, I didn't think that I would be there for that many games. Finding different combinations for the pieces that I had there with me.
Yeah, because nobody goes out ahead of time and brings 5 sets of suits. That's just I don't know if the word cocky is the right word, but you just go to the ring, like make it through the first show and you're fine. But no, you don't think wait. Yeah.
I'd be afraid of jinxing myself if I had that much clothing with me. Yeah.
Okay. So, let's see. What should I ask? Okay. I'm going to get into some of my regular questions at this point. I'm going to open with I think it's my longest standing question here on hashtag Jeopardy Live panel. It's the one when I had Ben Ingram more often, and he'd always ask it. But I'm not sure if this works for you, Miranda, because I think you were probably in and out before the lunch break. But I do get to ask Seth, and with this one, it's definitely a double-barreled question. Just because you did so well in games 4, 5, and 6 after, or at least 4 and 5 after, not doing so, winning, but, struggling a little bit the first 3, and you dominated your last 2. So obviously you had lunch at the Sony commissary in between the Wednesday and Thursday episodes. So what did you have for lunch? Because obviously it worked in your favor.
I had a chicken sandwich that I think it was some sort of like blackened chicken sandwich, if I remember correctly. Remember most specifically about it is actually like they were out of. And so I had to chicken salad, that's what it was. It was like a blackened chicken salad. Because I had ordered a sandwich and they were out of it, and then I turned the order form into the wrong person. It was a whole ordeal that I caused. So I was able, on the fly, I had to just decide chicken salad, and then also a whatchamacallit bar.
With all the answers inside, right? That's it.
Yeah.
But you guys give us the answers ahead of time. We all know that.
Oh.
Well, I will say something else in common with Philip Chu. He also had a bit of a rigmarole with his lunch order. But, because, apparently he tried to order a Reuben and then they forgot about it. But, so that's a, so that you would not be the first champion to have, various issues with their lunch order. But, hey, can you, any ideas, as to what caused, things to go so much better for you over your last couple of games, last week, as opposed to the first three of them?
Partly, I feel like I was warmed up. A rhythm that I felt pretty good about with the buzzer. Then, yeah, like we said at the beginning, the categories just happened to be things that were way more in my wheelhouse. So, partially being relaxed, and I also think that like if you won one, this was my experience at least, and Amy and Christopher, I'd be interested. I have to say about this, but this one I thought like I'm playing with the house money now. You know, like I can tell people that I was a Jeopardy champion. I won one. I get to play another game, and so I put way less pressure on myself towards the end of the day. Especially, you know, after having won 3, I was like, well, this is great. And if I lose one of these, it's like less keyed up and more able to relax into it. Like a little bit more tired towards the end of the day too, and less in my head about it. Yeah, I don't know. Did you all have that experience?
I'd say there's something to that. Once you've got a win under your belt, it takes off one of the big points of anxiety, and then you can really enjoy the experience a little bit more and I mean, I felt fully present. I felt like it was in the zone the whole time, but you know, having a win behind you, like one of the biggest fears is overcome. And so then you just see how far you can go with it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think Chris can speak to that.
No. If the game stopped right at $3,400 when I was in the lead, that'd been perfect. But no, we had to keep going. Ran out of good categories, went to the other ones. The ones I didn't care for. It's still fun though.
So, shifting gear, actually, you know, another question. I've never asked this on live panel. Again, this one's from Drew. Did any of the contestants listen to any music in the green room to psych themselves up before the taping? If so, who did you listen to?
Nope.
No.
I was going to make a joke about Coldplay, but no.
I definitely didn't, and I don't. I mean, you know, our phones were turned off, and I don't know if I had broken out an iPod, how that would have gone over, but I don't, you know, I didn't have that. So
Yeah, we had nothing either in our room either. No music at all. I think just a lot of, you know, little polite banter and the makeup session. That was it.
Yeah. Similarly in the green room, although in the hotel before I went, listened to highlights from the Top Gun soundtrack. So, my pre-show music.
That works. Now,
Really? Take My Breath Away was what got you over the hump.
See, Chris, I was thinking, you know, he was going to go with, you know, see, when he said that, I was thinking, okay, you know, Danger Zone, that's a pretty good, you know, that would be pretty good pump-up music, but
Playing with the Boys was also pretty instrumental, yeah.
So, shifting gears a little bit, I think, now, I think it's probably a good time to ask you the next question, Miranda. If you want to talk us through your thought process behind your yesterday's Final Jeopardy.
I sure do. Okay, so first off, let me say I did want to win. Of course I wanted to win. The category was 21st century music, and although I'm good at pop culture trivia, recent music is a blind spot. And I looked at the guys on my sides and I was like, these guys are in their 20s. They're probably going to know all this, you know, new stuff, Beyonce and I don't know who all, Pharrell, whatever. And I don't. So I bet small, which was stupid because there's really not that much difference between second and third place. So I should have just gone for it, right? But I didn't. And then the question came up, and if you watch, you can see me standing there for about 15 seconds with no freaking clue. You know, I was not writing because I didn't know. And then it just came to me. And then I was the only one who knew it, and I should have bet more. So that's that. It was a lack of confidence. Pure and
So then
simple.
Seth will be sending you Christmas presents for the rest of your life then now, right?
I think he better, yeah.
I think you deserve that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess a follow-up question. Would you, what would you say, to a, if a future contestant, say one of your roller derby friends, managed to get the call and then asked you for advice, what advice would you give to them?
For Final Jeopardy, unless you have a runaway, and if you have a runaway, that's freaking awesome. But otherwise, just bet it all. Because the difference between second and third place is nothing. The difference between second place and winning is everything. So just go for it. That's what I'd say.
Okay.
Yep.
And, I think that, obviously, people make mistakes, and the best that, we can do, I guess, is hope that other people, because obviously most people, if they make a mistake on Jeopardy, they don't, often don't get the chance to, redeem that mistake on the show. So I guess, the best we can do is hope that, the people who follow afterwards are able to learn from that mistake. And, so basically, I guess what I'm saying is hopefully people in the future can see what happened to you, Miranda, and not do the same thing. And I think if that
That'd be
happens,
great.
that's the best we can ask for. And
Well, and I think wagering it's very difficult. It's very psychologically daunting. I don't think I wagered as well as I could have, and not just because the J boards told me so. I knew this. I learned a lot about wagering when Arthur Chu had his run and after that. But one of the things that was actually most helpful to me during my game was in the evening discussion on the night before I actually got to tape. One of the other players was talking about her Final Jeopardy, and she said she wrote down her number and then said, and thought, that's the most money I've ever bet. And I thought, oh, no, you cannot think of it like that. It can't be money until Alex declares the winner, because that will make you afraid.
I wish someone had said that to me.
Yes.
That is very smart.
Yeah, you still get people that come to me and ask, okay, you got third place, so you got third place money, right? You got the 10,000. Like, no, that's not how it works.
If only.
One thing I did notice, though, I think from when I went back to J Archive earlier today and looked at your games as a refresher, and one thing I thought was that, I can see Sarah McNitt very much. I think she could appreciate at least one of your Final Jeopardy wagers. Of course, Sarah being just wager 4,000.
Mm.
So,
yeah, I don't remember all of my logic at the time, but I could do it differently because I've learned so much since then. But you don't get to. That's the shame.
well, the best we can do is advise our friends to that the information is out there.
Yeah.
Now, to all of you guys, this one's from Jay Johnson. Did you feel under any time pressure making your Final Jeopardy wager, or was it purely your thought process on the category?
No, they actually give you some time up there. It's not an immediate thing where you get the last question.
I should point out that before. Sorry to interrupt you there, Chris. I should point out Jay actually taped recently, and he'll be on the show in November. So I think he's asking more, not as much from a unlimited time point of view, but as much he's curious to see how other contestants felt.
Well, I can't think of it because I was in a lock game, so I had no way of catching first place anyway. So it was kind of really easy for me to bet no matter what happened. So it was very easy, very stress-free for me, unfortunately. You guys are different though, so go ahead and take over.
I didn't.
It was stressful, but not because of any time constraint, I would say.
Seth, you've got the most experience on this one. What are your thoughts on whether you ever felt any time pressure?
Oh, I mean, it was only the calculus, that I was doing with myself about how likely I felt I was to know something. That was way more pressure than like feeling like I was under any time crunch.
I don't know if people actually know also that they give you a little pad of paper and a pencil on there so you can keep track of it that way too. It's not everything all in your head. You can actually have the time to write all the other numbers out and figure out what you want to do.
Yep.
Okay. My next question. It's another one of my usual ones. How different is it watching the show now that you've been a contestant, taped?
It's very different, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you know what goes on now.
Mm-hmm. And plus, when you're part of like an alumni group like we are now, quite often you'll hear from people like on Facebook or whatever that are on future shows, and so you chat with them, and so you almost like you know them ahead of time. When you're watching them, you kind of pull for them in a way.
Mm-hmm. So
it's different now. You're actually watching future friends perform on there, as opposed to before you go there and watch and you had no idea who's playing. It's almost more fun now watching it, I think.
What about you, Amy?
It is very different. I mean, when I was watching before I taped, I was really sort of just trying to master it for myself. And once you know what goes on backstage, you have this whole other relationship to what's happening. I will say, my husband actually was on last week. Siddharth beat him. So I was in the audience for that first taping day of the new season. So I miss you guys, I'm sorry. But it is much more stressful to be the family member in the audience watching than to be the contestant on the stage. And that was weird too, because I just thought there's nothing you can do. And you just, you're sitting there thinking, oh, I know this, does he know this? I don't know.
I think that. I'm sorry. Since you actually had to go back as a former contestant, were you allowed to, say hi to Maggie and Glenn and those guys at all?
I was. She actually came up, and I mean, as I was being seated in the audience, I think I called out, "Hi, Maggie," and she came over and grabbed my hands and said hi, and so it was very nice to be there. But it was nice to come back, definitely, even though I was on the wrong side of the aisle.
Now, how much have you watched? How much have you watched of the games leading into yours, Seth? Because I'm obviously you've been on most of them this season, but so I guess how was it watching the first week of the season before your appearance, knowing what it was like being there.
It was really interesting, and especially when the first game where I saw Siddharth, and I sort of had this moment where I was like, okay, that was all real, like that really happened, like this is coming up, and I played against him. The outcome of the next few games was it's funny to see behind the curtain in that way, and because what I found that the set spatially different than what it feels like on TV, and so when I'm watching it, I'm still kind of impressed about like the way that it's filmed, so that the set looks it looks different to me, but also and I've been thinking about this as I've been watching them. You look around and like you see Maggie and Lori and Glenn and Karina and Mitch and like John and all the camera guys, and like they're all at work, and you're up there like most like exciting and stressful things you've ever done, and everybody else like it works like a fine oiled machine. now that when I'm watching it, I'm like, I know that, like, oh, in this commercial break, like, this is what we talked about while they were touching everybody's makeup up. We took lunch after this, and this is what we talked about at lunch. And as I go forward watching it, you know, I'll be interested to hear from people about like the little sort of backstage things like that. That's kind of how it's changed for me in some ways.
So, what were you surprised about having to drink smart water on camera?
Yes.
Do you think?
Yeah, I was not expecting that at all. Although it was a pleasant surprise.
Let's see. Yeah, because that actually came up last week. It was smart water got mentioned in our first panel of the season. So
Right.
I was curious to see what you guys thought of that. My next question, did your taping group exchange emails at all? I know yours did, Chris.
Right here. Right here.
But the rest of you, did you exchange any sort of contact information to kind of keep in touch between taping and airing?
Several of us did, not the entire group of us, but I've definitely kept in touch with a bunch of people. Cindy Conaway, Betsy, I know on Facebook I'm not as close to, Betsy Schroeder, who was the champion that I defeated, a number of others of us. And so we've had, I think Cindy's the one I've certainly stayed closest to. She was in the week before my episodes aired. And it is nice. And then, of course, you know, I've found other opportunities. You know, we've had other chances to connect with other folks, not from my taping era, but it's been great to just, it's a shared experience, and it's great to be able to relive that and sort of remind one another, like, oh, you know, this really happened and we were there, and support one another.
Yeah, it's almost like a giant fraternity, and people you haven't known at all, and then all of a sudden, you just like that, you have instantaneous recollections of what's happened. It's like up until a week ago, I never chatted with Seth at all, and now like texting back and forth a little too much, I think. I'm on Facebook too much anyway, as it is. But it's almost like everybody's like a brother or sister to you. You can kind of kid around with them and just kind of tell stories. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, did either of your taping or any of your taping groups, Seth, exchange any sort of things, or yours, Miranda?
Go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, a little bit, and we took some pictures. Took some pictures together at the end of the day, and then I've over the course of the weeks since then, I've connected with some people on Facebook as well. Yeah.
I mostly connected with people on Facebook, which has been great.
Okay. Now, obviously, we. I guess this one is mostly for Chris, because I know you got your pretty much your entire taping group. I'm pretty sure you're pretty glad you did that, right?
Yeah, actually, I got that idea from Jennifer Morrow. She's one of the first people I talked to early on in the whole process of going through everything. She's saying all these things you should be do to get ready, and one of the best things you can do is get the emails to everybody in your group, so afterwards you can talk to them, because when you come back, you can't talk to anybody about anything that happened on the show. But for those 12, 13 people that you're with, you can finally it's like a release point. Say, okay, I can tell you guys exactly how I felt 2 weeks after the event. And then finally, when you get the air dates, then you can tell everybody else how it went. But it's so nice to have those people, just right there anytime you want to talk about anything. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next question, kind of for the entire panel here. I know Bob Harris in Prisoner of Trebekistan talks about Pavlovian responses a little bit, and things like, well, if the show talks about a Finnish composer, probably going to be Sibelius, and things like biblical person with his head on a platter, well, that's probably going to be John the Baptist. So that came up recently on the show. Do you have any sort of favorite Pavlovian responses, or did you notice any of them when you were preparing for, trying to study for the show?
That's a good question. I can't think about that one for a while.
I mean, things that I've noticed in terms of recently, from Monday, there was the Belgian Surrealist Daily
Right.
Double, which was obviously Magritte. And every single time in J Archive, when Belgians, you search for Belgian Surrealist in J Archive, every single question is a René Magritte reference. And
Oh,
Who else could it be?
Right. And opera plus Egypt is always going to be Aida, and it seems as if when there's an opera question, there's bound to be Aida as one of the, or an opera category. Aida will be in it.
yeah. Or like a Chilean poet. So I was going to be every time.
As it turns out, for those of you who are in Learned League, John the Baptist's head on the platter came up in Learned League yesterday.
Yeah, I just missed that one too. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, it was, right in the I probably would have gotten it anyway, but it was, right in the forefront of my head based on the fact that it, had just come up recently on Jeopardy. And then, where else was? Oh yes, also references to oratorios in classical music.
Yes, yeah.
Very much usually Handel, and therefore Messiah. But yeah, if they're going to mention oratorio and it's not Handel, there's something else in there's something else in the in the clue to point you away from Handel. It's very obviously this is not Handel. By the way, I'm just going to go on the air. I know Alyssa Flagg is a long-time listener of Jeopardy Live Panel, and sadly for me as a Blue Jays fan, she is a Boston Red Sox fan. And thus, I wish to congratulate her Boston Red Sox on their very recent, as in last couple of minutes recent, clinching of the American League East.
Oh.
Unfortunately, the Blue Jays were not quite up to the task of actually closing out a victory tonight. They blew a lead in the ninth inning, but congratulations to the Red Sox. My next question for you guys is one that's I had Sarah Edwards on Live Panel a few months back, and ever since she's been on, I've been asking this question because she asked it in kind of the open season section of the panel. So, how did you guys kind of fall in love with Jeopardy?
I grew up watching it with my mom. And my only regret was that she had passed away long before I got the chance to go on the show. I honestly, if she had the wherewithal to go out in public and try for the show, she would have cleaned up. But I just remember watching it and just being so fascinated. And then after I met Bob Harris before I really started trying out for the show, and after reading his book, I thought, this is actually real. I could really do this. So,
yeah, I watched with my dad. So kind of your same story, except dad.
Yeah.
For me, it was more of Trivial Pursuit, tons of crossword puzzles. I mean, I was a crossword puzzle fanatic. And so I grew from that. And eventually, in my 20s and 30s, came around to Jeopardy and figured, I should try that sometime. And then fast forward 12 years later, I'm finally on the show, so I had a little time to prepare for that.
My story is kind of similar in my family. My parents always watched it. I found it really frustrating that I didn't know any of the answers. But I was intrigued by the way that the game worked, and I remember question that I ever got. It was about the Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral, and in the room, but I ran and very excitedly reported it to them that I had gotten one right, because I assumed that nobody ever did. I was like, they're so hard. How could anybody know that? Just became like a lifetime. I mean, that's like the way a 5-year-old brain works. Is I can't do it, so nobody must be able to. But turned into a lifetime appreciation for and love of the show. And when I was a kid, there was also a kid's version named Jet. And that I tried to be in one day. you won a PlayStation if you won it, so that was pretty cool.
Mhm.
Oh.
I always like hearing those stories about, the first time, this is the first time I got a question correct, and it's always a lot of, yeah, I always find it to be a good story. Let's see. I think I can ask this one. Drew has left this one on YouTube. For everyone there except Seth, because I know he probably is not allowed to answer since he is still playing. What did you do after your final game? Did you commemorate it in a special way?
Actually, in my case, I drove the winner of my game back to the hotel. She didn't have a ride, so I guess that's probably commemorating. I don't know. So actually, like, almost like a cab fare thing. So once I got her back to the hotel, I said, "That'll be $21,000, please." But
Jeopardy Uber surge pricing. Yeah, that's how it works.
No, I've talked to Liz plenty of times since then, though. So she's really nice. So next time she comes in Chicago, we're gonna hang out. So, well, Liz, come to Chi-Town, watch a Cup game.
Yeah, they're doing pretty well this year, aren't they?
Oh, damn time.
So, okay. My question for you, I've asked this of a couple of other Cubs fans. Who do you most basically of the Giants,
the teams
Mets,
that are up right now?
Of the Giants, Mets, or Cardinals?
Probably the Cardinals. We had the toughest time with them this year. We were only 10.
I hate the Cardinals.
Who would you rather face in the division series? The Giants, the Mets, or the Cardinals?
I want to say the Mets. I would say the Mets because of the injuries to the starting staff right now.
Of course, I would say, yeah, you guys have really struggled against the Cardinals as well as, the even year magic that the Giants always seem to have. But
yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably say, I guess we'll face the Mets. I hope, but it's the playoffs. You have no idea what's going to happen to that, though. I mean, look at the Mariners from a few years ago. They won 116 games and then they got knocked out the first round. So.
Is this calling your baseball team "we" a boy thing? Because I'm a Cubs fan, but I'm not playing.
Yes, I do. I would probably say yes to that question.
Okay.
We've given our hearts to these teams for so long. I guess it kind of feels like a collective thing now.
Oh, honey, I've been a Cubs fan since time immemorial. My dad, it was a genetic thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my dad back, he started like the late 50s. So yeah,
well. I should point out to that Jay is a Cards fan, so that could get interesting around here if the Cards happen to get the wild card. But also he commented on your lunch, Seth, chicken salad with a side of rigmarole.
Yes.
So yeah, for you guys, when you went out to tape, what did you do what else did you do in Culver City or the LA area?
In my case, pretty much nothing. We flew in. I did have dinner with Bob Harris the night before the first tape day, but then I was in the studio all day, not taping. We the contestants, we all hung out in the bar that evening, and everyone was like knocked out of sleep by 9:30. It's an exhausting day. And then I played most of the day on the Wednesday and had to fly back overnight. So yeah, didn't really see a whole lot of LA.
We went to Universal Studios and we were there for the weekend before. And that was fun, and we just did a bunch of fun stuff. It was cool. It was hot, but it was fun.
Yeah.
Seth's probably still there. He's probably still playing. So we have
Go ahead.
Well, in my case, I was there for a Friday show, so I was there the entire day in the studio, just kind of waiting and waiting and waiting. So that whole day was shot. By the next day, we had to leave kind of early, so we just had a quick time to just drive around Sunset Boulevard, the Walk of Fame kind of stuff. And that was it. Not a whole lot of time. Not like Seth, who's building a house there now. So.
I actually did did end up staying longer than I had originally planned, so I was able to see the highlights, the Hollywood sign, Boulevard, and the Walk of Fame, and I saw Star Trek at the Grauman's Chinese Theater, and then I saw it with friends in the Cinerama Dome. So I got to see like the two awesome movie theaters in LA.
Nice. Is it still called Grauman's, or is it changed? Did somebody else buy it?
It's like TCG Chinese Theater or something.
Yeah.
It's a that owns it now, actually.
Like Costco.
Yeah. Venice Beach. So, kind of the highlights of the LA experience.
Makes sense. There appears to be a bit of a various college football allegiances on the chat tonight. Jay is obviously a Tennessee Volunteers fan. I somewhat resent Seth and his UGA-ness. Go Vols. Drew is, I presume, with Go Doors, would be a Vanderbilt fan. Actually, I'm just gonna now that it's aired, the show is aired in Los Angeles, and I'm just going to say there was a college football category tonight.
Yeah.
I feel as though there has been a larger than normal number of college football categories ever since the first one went viral last January with Terry. Do you think the writers are deliberately doing that to see how the contestants will play with college football?
Yeah, that's one of those statistical things you got to check out, on J Archive, because is it an actual trend, or is it something you actually know for sure?
It's one of those things where to me it feels like there might be, there might have been some sort of correlation, because last January when Terry got Auburn and Alabama mixed up, it went very viral, and it always seems like there's actually no, there was not an Auburn clue tonight, but there has been a lot of Auburn clues in the college football categories.
Like some way of trying to gin up more.
Why they have Jeopardy to put that stuff on that show?
Yeah, so you would think, and but I mean, for some reason, they seem to enjoy having college football on the big show too. So
yeah.
Oh well. Fun fact: college football, actually, you know what? No, college basketball is probably more of a weak spot for me than college football. But were you expecting that Alex was going to talk about roller derby, Miranda?
I kind of thought he might. It was probably the most interesting thing on my fun facts, or, yeah, I wasn't surprised that he asked about it.
Do you know if that was
he seemed really excited about it.
Is that the highlighted one on your card? Do you know that ahead of time, or?
I think it was. Yeah, I think Karina highlighted that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Seth, what are you on, like page 3 or 4 of your? Are you running out of things to say yet?
That poor reporter from the Chicago Tribune who was complaining, I think I've become his personal biographer now. But
and it's not that interesting of a life.
Actually, if I can ask Seth a question, how long were you here in Chicago before you moved on to Texas?
About 6 months.
Okay.
Very long. It was the plan to be there a little bit longer, and my girlfriend got on teaching down here, and So we had to move kind of suddenly. And so that's why I was introduced to being from Chicago, because I had recently moved there and I thought I was going to be there for a little bit longer.
Okay. So can we still adopt you then as one of our own?
We'll
Okay.
see if I end up back in Chicago. Yeah.
You're welcome now. So anytime you want to come back.
Meanwhile, on the chat here, of course, Aaron's interview mentions ice cream. And if you've ever been to Prince Edward Island, you know that the best ice cream does not belong to Ben & Jerry's. It belongs to a place in Prince Edward Island called Cows. And I had some myself when I was in PEI this summer. And yes, it is significantly better than Ben & Jerry's. And I will fight you if you try to tell me otherwise. Also, Jay is being like, they had to class up LSU by requiring the red stick translation as part of the clue. He thought that was nice. So at this point, I'm actually out of questions on my cards. I also want to say to everyone who tweeted in that the questions were excellent. Ditto for most of the things I saw on the chat. Definitely a lot of things worthy of me asking you guys. Do you guys have any random questions you'd like to ask of anyone else on the panel?
Actually, I'll ask Seth this. Since you were in 7, 8, how many shows you've been in, how many actual questions do you recall when you're watching the show a lot? I'm at home now because, like in my case, I was only on one show and I can remember maybe half the questions. But like if you're watching show 2, 3, and 4, it's like, did I answer that? I mean, I had no recollection of that.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. It's happened a couple of times. There was one in today's game. They were asking the question, and I was like, "Oh, Happy Days." I obviously got this one, and then I didn't and then I neither I nor Harold buzzed in, and I was like, "Why didn't I buzz in? That's obvious. Like, it's got to be Happy Days." But then there have been a couple where during the question I was like, "Oh, I have no idea what the answer is," and I buzzed in and got it. So the Seth of a couple months ago apparently had access to a totally different set of facts than this one does. But it's kind of funny, you know, like some of the stuff that I got was because of studying that I had been doing specifically, and it's just kind of like been sifted out of my brain since then. There are a couple of questions that have stuck out to me. Like today's Final Jeopardy was really memorable. There was a Buckminster Fuller question at the end of I think in last Thursday's game that I remember really liking. That factoid has just always really been cool to me that he invented geodesy dome. So that one was really memorable, and there have been a couple of other memorable ones. But yeah, it's funny watching it and like, oh man, I have no idea, and then I got it right, or like obviously that's it, and he does nothing, and I'm yelling at him.
Yeah, for Amy Miranda, do you have certain ones that you remember, like a favorite question that you answered? You're like, yeah, I'm so glad I got that.
I mean, it is hard to remember what you did. You know, you're so in the moment that, I mean, and I know Scott probably talked about this last week too, because it was a blur for him, and he was watching and had no idea he knew these things, and said, I don't know if I was forming memories, I was just playing, you know. But I was very proud of my first Final Jeopardy answer because I deduced it in the 30 seconds. I didn't come in already knowing it. I figured it out. And so being able to trace that thought process was like, it was exciting to me that was possible. You know? And then I did it.
I think I have two. One is, I still am pretty proud of my Final Jeopardy answer, even if I didn't bet well. But the other one is Lin-Manuel Miranda, because I love him, and it was awesome to be able to say his name.
I was very envious that you got that one.
Yeah, Alex was able to pick up on that as well. And
Yep.
Apparently he's hosting Saturday Night Live this week.
Or
I haven't watched in years, but I'm going to watch this one.
Apparently, I read that earlier today that apparently he's hosting Saturday Night Live this week, and Somebody else, was like, well, he's like the 8th person with a hyphen in his name to host Saturday Night Live. This is the kind of thing that comes up on my Twitter timeline with who I'm following. Random stuff like that. And, so, any other questions?
I guess we'll see Seth back here next week, right? The week after. No pressure or anything. No.
So, yeah, congratulations on your wins again, Seth.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations,
Thank
you
you.
bastard. Just kidding.
You had me. My heart sank when I heard Viva La Vida. I was like, obviously that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
good game.
Yeah, it was fun, and you played great. So, I'm not ashamed of losing to you.
Anywhere on the TOC yet? I mean, is that just still no idea when that's going to be taking place? Seth, have they said anything to you at all about that at all?
It wasn't on the schedule when I was out there. Yeah, so I don't know. I assume it's coming up, but I don't know.
Okay, so yeah, I obviously haven't heard anything either. So yeah, any other questions at this point between the panelists here?
That's
No.
after the show's done. Maybe.
Okay, so I'd like to thank everyone for to you guys definitely for coming on. Also to everyone who listened in, also or maybe tweeted in with a question or, said something on the chat. So thanks, guys. It was a lot of fun tonight. So for everyone here at hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel and the JeopardyFan.com, once again, I am Andy Saunders. Remember, obviously, there is an audio simulcast of this. You can subscribe to that on iTunes, Google Play Music. Please do so. It's there are obviously extra audio only features every week. So thank you guys very much. And I'm just going to end the broadcast now. So have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks very much.
Thanks. Good night.